So welcome again to the Single Subject World Language webinar. We will be covering the new version 1 for 25-26 school year. And as we move into our next slide, we'll go ahead and quickly introduce ourselves, and then we'll ask you to introduce yourself as well. So my name is Julie Holmes. I'm one of the consultants on the performance assessment team, working closely with my colleague Marissa. I'm predominantly covering the math cycle as well as cycle 1. And I will kick it over to Marissa to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Marissa Luna Lopez. I'm a consultant here with the Performance Assessment Development Team, supporting primarily the LPA, Cycle 2, and CalAPA. We're also joined here by our colleague from Evaluation Systems, Dr. Webb. You want to say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Xavier Webb. I'm a Senior AA Director with the Evaluation Systems Group at Pearson, and we work very closely with the CTC on the development and operations of the performance assessment. So I'm looking forward to being able to share the new information with you today, which Julie and Marissa will be leading, but I'll be in the background and happy to help facilitate and address questions.
All right, so thank you all again for being here. So we look at the next slide. We want to know who's in the room. So go ahead and use the chat. Give us your name and your institution and role. And you could also indicate if you're single subject or world language or both. So we'll go ahead and watch the chat fill up. Great. Welcome. We see a lot of familiar faces. Some faces that were here last week for the PK3 as well as the multiple subjects webinars that we had last week. Fantastic. Thanks again for taking time out of your day. All right, as we move on, this recording is going to be recorded, and we will share that link in a follow-up email that will come from Evaluation Systems, and you will be provided with a link that will give you access through a private link through YouTube. So you can go back, you can rewatch the webinar if needed. We'll put it up on PSD News as well for anyone who was not able to make it today. Our meeting norms, we've got a lot of people in the room. We're expecting over 130. So we ask everyone to just remain muted, reduces the background noise and any interruptions. But of course, if you have a comment or question, please raise your hand and you can unmute. Since we have so many on the call, let's keep our questions to a real general focus. We'll provide you with an email address at the end when you can email us those really specific questions that you might have that pertain to your program and or your candidates. Avoid multitasking. I'm guilty of this all the time in webinars, but we've got a lot to cover today in a short amount of time. We will honor your time as well, so just moderate your questions and comments. And if you choose, you can look in the top right of your screen and set it to speaker view if that is of help to you. Let's look at our agenda today. So we have a Google Resources folder. We'll share the link here in just a second in the chat. And I will talk about what's in the folder because that's very important. Then we will go through an overview of cycle 1. And what we ask is that in the Google folder, you will see the guide that says highlighted copy if you want to pull it up and follow along. So if you are single subject, pull up the single subject highlighted copy, and world language, pull up your highlighted copy as well. We also have the Part B template that we'll look at. And then we'll close out with some upcoming program supports and contact information. All right, let's look at the Google folder that Xavier has put the link in the chat. Thank you so much. So let me know if you're not able to access that. So we do have a single subject folder. We have a world language folder. And inside, you will see a clean copy of the watermark draft. It is still in draft form. It says draft across it, but this is an almost clean copy, polished version. It will help you in supporting your candidates. It will help you in preparing your coursework. Now, we also took that copy and we made a highlighted copy as well. That's what we're going to be covering today. as Marissa and I just want to point out those key words and focus areas um, for you. So the link only shows single subject. Both should be in the folder. Let me put the link in one more time. Let's see if try that. You also have a watermark draft of the Part B template. That's a big part of course, the planning for cycle 1 and for cycle 2. So we've provided that. And we've also put in there a backwards planning map for you for cycle 1 and for cycle 2. We had a lot of great feedback from this backwards planning map in the field test. And so this is a document copy. It's not a PDF. It is meant for you to make a copy and tweak it and make it your own that fits your program. These are, again, just suggestions. I think it's an 8 or 9 week timeline. If that works for you in your program, great. You can follow something similar. If you need to mix it up and it becomes a 5 week timeline, that's fine too. So that, again, it's just a resource. And at the end of today's webinar, we will put a copy of this presentation into that resource folder for you. So bookmark that Google folder. That is going to be a good resource for you for the fall. Okay, and as we look at the next slide, we want to talk about this early. We didn't talk about this early enough in last week's webinar, so we've bumped up this slide to just have this conversation right now. Your access to all of the materials, all of the templates, the finished guides, everything, that will be available on September 23rd. I know that that's later than what we discussed in the spring, but you know, we have we have a lot of guides, we have a lot of templates that needed to be reviewed and polished and published, and so it is taking just a little bit longer than was anticipated. We have very much apologized for this delay, but we're going to give you so much today to work on with your candidates in coursework that I think that you will find that you will be very busy right up until that deadline of September 23rd. And then your candidates can actually register and download the guide and templates for themselves. Now, let's go back one slide real quick. Just real quick, the passing standard for version 1, the commission approved this at the June meeting. For the version 1 for cycle 1 and for cycle 2 is 16 points to pass, and candidates can have more than one score of a 1. They can. Whereas in previous versions, they could only have one score, no more than one score of a 1. But this is a total of 16 points to pass, and it's 14 points if they're utilizing the secondary passing standard. And again, they can have more than one score of a 1. So 16, 14, those are the passing standards for cycle 1 and for cycle 2.
And just to add to that, a big reason why the passing standard is the way it is because we have not done standard setting study on this yet. And so this is meant to be very supportive to candidates. And then we will be doing standard setting studies in the spring. So be on the lookout for those sessions so we can set standards and adapt the passing scores for the next year of implementation.
Thank you. Now we've had a lot of questions about when you, the faculty, will get access to the resource page and you will be able to download the templates and the guide yourself. We've put the links here in the presentation, and the new version 1 password and the materials will all be available to you on September 23rd. So that's when you can go to this link for CalTPA faculty resources, policies and resources. You'll be able to click on assessment materials, select the credential pathway to access the materials, and then remember it downloads as a zip file, and then you put in the password and you'll be able to get all of those materials. So that will be available also on September 23rd. That's just the magic date. All right, as we look at cycle 1 and cycle 2, we have 2 instructional cycles. Cycle 1 is learning about students and planning instruction. and candidates follow the 4 steps of planning, teach and assess, reflect, and then apply. And the same for cycle 2, but it is assessment-driven instruction. So there is incorporating assessment into their work, and a lot more is expected of candidates in cycle 2. So structurally, I think as we kind of go through the changes today, you'll see that we've kept the structure, but we also learned some good things from candidates and programs and faculty in the field test. So we really did want to incorporate that into these upcoming guides, and I think that you'll see that here today. So let's get into it. Get your coffee, get ready. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to start with single subject, cycle 1, learning about students and planning instruction. And if you are here for world language, please have your world language highlighted copy pulled up. So I think that you'll see a lot of those differences and a lot of those similarities. All right. So as we look at this first slide, so what we'll do, the structure for today is I'm going to kind of go over for step 1, some of those big core tenets and things to be on the lookout for. And then we're going to pop over and look at the highlighted copy of the guide. All right. So step 1 in cycle 1, where the candidate is using their recent student information. What do they know about the kids that they are teaching to develop their grade level content specific learning goal? And something new is that they will be writing an aligned ALD learning goal. ALD is for academic language development, not ELD. ELD has been moved solely to cycle 2. So cycle 1 will focus on candidates developing academic language development, or ALD. Another difference is the ALD learning goal is specific for single subject, and our world language candidates will write an aligned vocabulary learning goal. I know that these sound very similar. We'll show you some examples when we get to the guide. And those examples that we're going to go over today is definitely something that you as faculty could go over with your candidates as well. Throughout step 1 and throughout the whole cycle, they're planning that safe and positive learning environment to support their students through progressing through both goals. Again, these are new teachers. So as you know, they might not have these norms set up. They might not know how to set up that safe and positive learning environment. So that's another core tenet that can be reviewed with new candidates as they're preparing to start cycle 1. And really learning how to leverage those student assets, whether they're cultural, whether they're linguistic, or whether it's an interest. They've got to keep these assets top of mind when they're planning their lesson and their adaptations as well. No deficit thinking. We're looking at the assets. What do students bring to the classroom, linguistically, culturally, or what are their interests? So that's really another core tenet that you as programs can be working on with your candidates in preparing them to get started with cycle 1. Designing that content-specific activity and promoting higher order thinking and thinking about how they'll describe how students' learning will be monitored. Again, core tenets of this cycle. Another thing that they will do in cycle 1, they will write adaptations for 3 focus students. And they will base this on recent information that they have learned about these students. They might have learned it from their cooperating teacher. They might have learned it through observation. They might have learned it through looking at some testing. So there's lots of examples in the guide to refer to as candidates are questioning, like, what do I base this on? And they connect it to those assets and interests, excuse me, can be one or the other or both. Addressing those academic language development needs for single subject or addressing those vocabulary development needs for world language. And of course, content-specific learning needs. And just to point out an additional difference for world language is just to ensure that the lesson is planned and delivered in the target language, integrating language learning into that content instruction. And I think that you'll see that as you have the guide up in front of you. All right, let's pop over and look at the guide. We're looking at the single subject guide. We haven't shared the link for the slides. We're going to give that at the end of the presentation. We'll put it in the Google folder. All right. All right, here is the single subject cycle 1 as we scroll down. Let's see, keep going. You'll see the big word draft across. So this is the watermark draft. Keep going down, table of contents. And keep going. All right, let's stop there. I might need my glasses. Can you make it a smidge bigger? Say, does anyone else? Ah, perfect. Okay. Starting with the overview. This highlighted copy is meant to be something that you could go over with your candidates or just pull it up and provide to them. They could also watch this webinar, whatever is helpful to you. We're very transparent. We want to get this information out there. So cycle 1 really focuses on developing that engaging content-specific lesson for just one group of students. It includes 3 focus students, as we talked about, based on their diverse assets and interest and their needs. What do you know about them? What do they need? What adaptations need to be made? All right, let's keep scrolling down. I will not be so chatty, I promise. It just highlighted that for reference, when you click on a hyperlink, it'll take you down maybe to the glossary, might take you to an external website. If it takes you down in the guide, you just hit that Alt plus the left arrow and it pops you right back up to where you were. There's an overview of steps 1 through 4, just something to review with your candidates. We'll be going through this today, so we're just going to keep scrolling past this. And then the evidence table is a great resource for you to go over with your candidates. Again, just pointing out that they're writing 2 goals, their learning goal that's content specific, and their academic language goal for single subject or their vocabulary development goal for world language. All right, let's keep on going down. The essential questions. This has been moved to the beginning of the guide. You will see in step 1 planning that there are 4 rubrics. Well, in total for cycle 1, there are 8. So step 1 plan with 4 rubrics, that's half of the assessment right there. So that's really something to keep in mind so that you're allotting enough time for your candidates to prepare for step 1 because it is such a big part of this assessment as they to set them up with a good foundation to move on before they move on to steps 2, 3, and 4. All right, let's keep going. In step 1 planning, they're getting to know their students. We've highlighted, you'll see the green call out box. That's some new videos that we've embedded into the guides for you and your candidates to watch that give some really helpful tips and tricks about getting to know your students. So that's a good way to frame the work. You'll notice that we've got a little call out icon for the template. This is template part A, your written narrative of contextual information. So when you're doing this work in the guide, that's what you're using, part A template. As we keep going down, give some directions. And here, these little bullets, that's what they include for as they get to know their group of students. So even though we don't have the Part A template today, we won't have that until September 23rd, these are the same prompts that will be in the template. So this is something that you could review with your candidates. You could cut and paste and have them start working on it before they have to move it over to the actual template. So you actually do have what will be in the template. It's just in a different form. All right, as we keep scrolling down, so that was about the group. Now this part is about focusing on those 3 focus students. And again, they're still using template A. There are the directions about how they will intentionally adapt their content specific and their ALD teaching and support throughout the lesson. So focus student 1, who is focus student 1? Well, that's a student who needs additional support with academic language development. That's for single subject. For world language, that would be vocabulary language. So they're very, very similar. And then you'll see the bullets about what they provide for focus student 1. Those are the exact same things that'll be in the template. Now we move on to focus student 2, selecting a student who needs support with making progress towards meeting the grade level content specific standards. So maybe they have gaps in their learning. Maybe they have some misconceptions about the content. They're not at grade level. They just need additional support with this content, whatever it might be. Might be your focus student two. And again, here are the same prompts for focus student two. And we scroll down, look at focus student three. This is a student who has just that need for some additional adaptations to support their well-being and or their behavior. So it might be a well-being issue. It might be a behavioral issue, it might be both. Again, candidate's choice. Um, so we have linked to life experiences, inside or outside school, something's going on with this child, this student, and the teacher needs to make some adaptations to support them. So that concludes part A, the contextual information about their group and their three focus students. And now let's move into the lesson plan. Now, this is a Part B template that you can use our provided optional template that we're going to look at in just a minute, or you, the program, could create your own Part B template that is your lesson plan format. We just ask and beg and plead that you look at it carefully and make sure that it aligns to what's being asked in the prompts and make sure it aligns to, doesn't have to be our exact format, but it prompts them up to ask the right questions so that they're not missing something that would be relevant as they get scored and something maybe was left off of your template and didn't prompt them to answer it. So carefully look at those, but it is an option if you'd like to use your own lesson plan template. So now they're going to create those learning goals based on state standards. And or curriculum framework. So here we go. So they're going to select their content specific standard or their framework. They're going to develop their content specific learning goal. So this is also new for new candidates. So this takes time, as you are probably very aware. Looking and deciphering content standards takes some time and practice. And then writing that learning goal takes time and practice. And you'll see that in a few, we'll scroll down and we'll look at an example. Then they're writing their related academic language goal. We don't want to make it unrelated. We want it to align with the content. So again, ALD for single subject, vocabulary for world language. And again, we have some examples as we scroll down. And then they write about their instructional strategies. We've highlighted that call out box at the bottom, content standards and curriculum frameworks, and provided some links as support. And we can keep scrolling down. And these are the examples I've been mentioning because I do think that this is important, and I do think that candidates need some examples sometimes if they're just really unsure, like, what do you mean by a learning goal? So here's a call out box, how to write a content specific learning goal. You'll see that this is a single subject standard that was cited in world language. It'll be a world language standard that was cited. And then we give an example about how to put it together based on the students that they know that they're planning for and the lesson that they're going to do. And as right underneath it, this is how to write an academic language learning goal. In that second call out box. And again, in world language, you'll see that you have a vocabulary learning goal. So this is based on 8th grade ELA standards. So anyway, we hope that this is of help to you and your candidates as you kind of get started. And these are all in the Google folder so that you can go over this with your candidates now, because it does take some time. All right, let's keep going. And then the adaptation. So Part C template, I don't know if you remember, that used to be the rationale, but we have such a big part of this assessment is those 3 focus students and differentiating your instruction. So we have dedicated the Part C template solely to the lesson adaptations for the 3 focus students. So here are the prompts. You'll see adaptations, connections to recent content-specific learning, leveraging assets and or interests, and learning needs. So they're writing about each one of their three focus students. So they're going to, these are different students with different learning needs. So these would be different adaptations for each of those 3 focus students. This is not a cut and paste kind of situation. certainly when we get to their student assets, they have gotten to know in part A their students very deeply. So how are they in explaining how that lesson is going to really leverage or build on what they bring to the classroom, those strengths that those students bring. So again, this is part C template. And again, while we don't have it for you yet, you have it here in the guide. You have the prompts ready to go. All right, let's keep scrolling down. And finally, to wrap up step one is an upload where they upload their resources and the materials that they're going to use to teach this lesson, their content specific lesson. They can give a description or they can give images. And so that is just an upload. There's no template provided. Keisha, I see your question. Can you define the difference between what a learning goal for ALD would be compared to vocabulary? I'd have to have the cycle one world language pulled up in front of me to give you a better um, definition, but they are very similar, of course, but the aligned vocabulary goal is aligned to the world languages standards. And so they are focusing on that vocabulary development to support their world language standard. And in single subject, they are writing that academic language. What is that academic language needed to access the content specific in the single subject lesson? So yes, they are very, very similar. And Beth, as I read the chat, world language, essentially everything being taught could be considered academic language in world language. And Beth, you're not wrong. Because there is so much specific vocabulary when you're teaching that target language. And so I think the example in the World Language Guide is very specific to, I forget the grade level, but a dual immersion Spanish classroom and specific vocabulary that they would need to access that lesson. So again, I hope that that helps, and when I have a break, I can put more into the chat about that. All right. And Christy, you have a question. Are single subject cycle one and multiple subject cycle one pretty much identical aside from what they are teaching? This is a great question, and they are not as identical as they used to be moving forward with version one. And that's something that Marissa and I really want to make sure that all of you understand is that I know in planning coursework, and I know certainly when I was, you know, supporting district interns, we would put coursework together. We'd have our single subject candidates and our multiple subjects candidates together as well in coursework. And then we, of course, separate it out for pedagogy. They are similar structurally, yes, but there are, I think, it's more differences now than certainly what you have seen in the past. And I think as we go today, it'll be more evident. All right, so let's go back to our PowerPoint real quick. And we look at step two. So step two, they are filming and videoing their lesson. And again, keeping in mind that safe and positive learning environment, their UDL strategies that they're going to use to support progress towards both content and ALD for single subject and vocabulary for world language, keeping those students actively involved, active, not worksheets, thinking out loud, active, higher order thinking during the instruction. And they're monitoring them. They're watching, they're observing. What are they learning about student learning as the lesson unfolds? And then responding intentionally to student needs in the moment to support their learning for single subject. And for world language, they are responding in the target language. In step two, the video or videos would reflect that accurate content and align with what they planned in step one. Ever so often, we'll see a video in step two, and it has nothing to do with what they have planned in step one. So again, just reminding candidates that their alignment throughout all 4 steps is very, very important. And then those additional differences for world language, just World language candidates, they are teaching and responding in that target language or in the target language with English as appropriate. And you will see that for world language candidates throughout the world language guide in the target language or in the target language with English as appropriate. And then just with that, not responding intentionally in that target language that they are teaching would bring the candidate down to a level 1 in scoring. So that's something that we'll point out on the rubrics, but that's something to be thinking about with your candidates as they're preparing. All right, let's go
Julie,
into the guide. Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. Before we jump over, we had a
yeah.
question in the chat about the depth of understanding of UDL that candidates will need
Mm.
to know to be successful, and how will they be assessed, whether their strategy is specifically UDL focused. And I was thinking that as we jump back into the guides, we can maybe take a look at the rubrics to answer that. Is that, or do you
I
want to be
think
able to speak
that's
to it now, or?
No, and I think, yeah, let's look at that in the rubrics. But what I'd also mention too is sometimes we see that candidates put a lot of UDL strategies. And if they're going to utilize all of those, great. But they don't have to. I mean, they can just pick 1, 2, 3 UDL strategies that they're really going to focus on. And this is a really pared down version of just one lesson. So they don't have to kind of cram too much into it. But I think as we look at the rubrics and as we look at step 2, it'll be a little bit more evident. And then Ruby says, will candidates receive a condition code if their lesson plan exceeds the 10-page limit? No, they won't get a condition code, but um, an assessor would just not look at anything past the page limit maximum. Okay, let's go into the guide. Here we go, moving into step 2. Oh, I forgot. Hold on, wait, the rubrics. Going to give you a quick little mini tutorial on rubrics. You'll see and notice in the guides, moving forward, all the version 1s, the rubrics that pertain to that step are immediately following each step. I'm not explaining that well. Let me rewind. So after step 1, you will find all of the step 1 rubrics. After step 2, you'll find all the step 2 rubrics because it's so important. It's such a big part of the cycle. We want candidates um, integrating and thinking and doing peer reviews with the rubrics and really understanding how these rubrics work. So scoring starts at level 3. I don't know if all of you knew that or not, but an assessor will always start at a level 3 and they will go through each one of those constructs, those sentences or constructs, and then they will look for clear evidence. If they do not find clear evidence, then they would move down to a level 2 and begin scoring from that point on. But if they find all of the evidence that is in each one of the constructs for level 3, then they would move up to a level 4. So it is very important to go over this with your candidates. So scoring starts at a level 3. That is the target. What do you always say, Marissa? Three,
What? These
about
three
level 3s?
TPEs, three. Yeah.
3s meet the TPEs, 3 gets degrees, whatever it is that will keep you on track for remembering that level 3 is the target. So I've highlighted some keywords between a 2 and a level 3. Again, we don't start at level 2, but that is what might take candidate down. So in level 3, the candidate's lesson planning is using recent content-specific information about the group to develop one age or grade level appropriate content-specific learning goal. Great. If we find that clear evidence in step 1, fantastic. They've met that first rubric. But if you look at a level 2, it's that they did not clearly use recent content specific information. So that is what would bring them down. And I think sometimes just understanding those differences is a great way, and a great way that for me that helped me be of support to candidates. If I understood clearly what might bring them down, then we could have that discussion about that clear evidence and did they meet that. So that's another way that we're just suggesting another way to kind of embed this in your coursework and really have those conversations, put them in peer groups, let them talk about it, let them show evidence to one another. You can look at evidence as well. You are just more the coach. You're coaching them through it. Um, if you're not finding clear evidence, you just kind of coach them through that. Well, I'm not seeing some clear evidence here. You might want to, go back and rethink how you're stating this, or rethink how you can make this more clear, or bring in some different information. I don't know how you might structure that. But again, going through these rubrics is so important with candidates. Another helpful tip, and then I promise you I'll move on, is take the construct in level 3 and flip it to a question. So you could say for that level 3 first construct, does your lesson plan use recent content specific blah, 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 blah? And they say yes. And you say, show me where. Where in A, B, C, or D would I find that information? Where is it? Where did you do that? It might be in 2 or more places. That's fine. But it's just a way to kind of get candidates interacting with the rubrics. So again, hopefully this is of help to you. You'll see at the bottom of level 1, I highlighted that level 1 construct, and it kind of might be on 2 pages. But the candidate's lesson plan contains inaccuracies in content, or they don't use age or grade level standards or frameworks. That would be an automatic 1, even if everything else is there and perfect. But if they don't use those age or grade level appropriate standards or frameworks, then that would be something that would automatically bring them down to a 1. Just to keep in mind. All right, as we move on, again, there are, as I mentioned, 4 rubrics in step 1. So we've gone through the first rubric briefly. I know we're running short on time, but the next rubric, 1.2, this is all about Focus Student 1. So this is all about how they've differentiated their instruction and made adaptations for that first focus student. So keep that in mind as we go to the next rubric in planning, 1.3. This is all about Focus Student 2. Same thing, meeting adaptations to meet their learning needs. And the next rubric, as you guessed it, is all about Focus Student 3. So that wraps up step 1, and that wraps up half of the assessment. Step 2, they're teaching and recording their content-specific lesson. They're providing 1, 2, 3 video clips. I know that that is strange language, and this is something new. Again, they have a choice. They can submit 1 video, they can submit 2, or they can submit 3. We have moved away from annotations. Instead, candidates will write commentary, and they have a choice in those number of videos that they want to submit. The only caveat is the total number of minutes for all 3 videos cannot exceed 15 minutes. So if they want to do a 10-minute video and a 2-minute video and a 1-minute video, that's fine. They don't even have to take up the full 15, but they cannot exceed it. There's a recording, and let's keep scrolling down. Again, as we go through, these are the clips that the candidate would submit. So something, a clip showing that active content-specific learning, the content-specific academic language development for single subject, vocabulary for world language, and then how they're monitoring students' content-specific learning. So those are the very specific things you can go over now with your candidates about what they will be, what we're looking for in those clips, and then the commentary. Don't be scared off by commentary. Commentary is basically taking what the candidates were writing in annotations and putting it into a Word document, except they have a lot more space now and room to really go into depth and describe what they're doing, the instructional choices that they were making in the moment. So there's a lot that, it was restricted with annotations because there was a word limit. And so this gives up to, gosh, I don't even know how many pages, but it's in the evidence table. But they have a lot more space now to write their commentary about the video clips and answer those commentary prompts. You'll also notice that they have another choice point. It can be they can use the written commentary template, or they can do a verbal response or American Sign Language response. So a verbal response would be you turn on the camera and you just talk and you talk and you answer those prompt questions and you hit that record button. It could be up to 10 minutes of video where they are just authentically talking and describing what we're seeing in those video clips 1, 2, and or 3. We like the choice point. In the field test, we did not have many candidates that opted for the verbal video response, but you never know. As we roll this out, it'll be interesting to see this year if some of your candidates opt for that choice. Okay, as you look on the next page, page 22, those prompts are what they're writing about in their commentary. And again, it's all here for you in the guide, so you can think about and talk about, how they might be writing about that, and how, they would be incorporating those into their clips. Okay, and as we wrap up, let's look at, there are 2 rubrics in step 2. 1.5, they're creating and sustaining that safe and positive learning environment. And then look at level 2. They've attempted to create and or sustain. They did one, but maybe not the other. That's automatic, brings them down to a 2. So I think that's good information for you guys to understand and know. And again, back to Ruby's, I think it was Ruby's point about using UDL focused strategies. Strategy or strategies? So they might use one UDL strategy that they want to work on throughout this one lesson, that content specific lesson that they're teaching. Or they might have 2, they might have 3, 5, I don't know. It's candidate choice again. But it can be just one that they want to focus on. Something that's going to support their students and making progress towards meeting these content specific and ALD or vocabulary learning goals. So what strategy might they select that's really going to help the kids make progress and access the content and move forward in progressing? Did that answer your question, Ruby, or do we need to? I don't know. So put it in the chat. We might need to come back to that. Let's look at the next rubric, 1.6. And this is still teaching and assessing, and that they're clearly engaging in active higher order thinking. You'll see at level 2, it's a minimal engagement. Back to level 3, that they're monitoring student learning and they're responding intentionally to support through their students throughout the lesson. So again, really, hopefully you'll be interacting with these rubrics a lot with your candidates, because they've got to get through all of level 3 in order to even look at the 4. And you'll notice in all version 1 assessments, levels 4 and 5 is just one construct now. It is not multiple constructs. Okay, that wraps up step 2, and we'll move back into the PowerPoint and we'll look at reflect. So many of the skills that are in step 3, reflect, can be practiced in coursework, in fieldwork observations, or other opportunities where you're asking the candidate to reflect on their planning and instruction. We're not looking for perfection in the CalTPA. We're looking for an authentic, reflection on what worked and maybe what didn't work. I planned for this, but it didn't work very well. And here's why. Here's what I thought would happen, and here's what ended up happening. That seemed like every day of my teaching career. I thought this would happen when I would plan something this way, and then things that I never could anticipate would always happen. And so, just getting candidates to be vulnerable and reflect on those things is so important. So throughout step 3, they're reflecting on their effectiveness. Not everything has to be effective. It was wonderful, 100% effectiveness. Doesn't have to be effective, just reflecting on it. What was effective, what wasn't? In their asset-based, UDL-focused, content-specific lesson, and really going into an analysis, not a summary. We don't need a summary. We've already watched the videos. We read your plan. We already know what you planned for, and we know what you taught. But now really go into depth and analyze and think about it and outline for us what was effective about those adaptations for the 3 focus students. Because as we all know, things don't always work out as we anticipated. So, and then, little things, good things happen that we never expected. So really go into depth about that. Um, what was the impact of that safe, positive environment? And then they've got to refer back to evidence from steps 1 and/or 2. So just looking back at their planning, looking back at their teaching, what can they incorporate that would support their reflection and their analysis? Okay, let's go back into the guide. And so now we're in template G. This is a written narrative where they're just writing about, they're reflecting on what they've learned. There's another video to support. All right, let's keep scrolling down. Here are the reflection prompts. Again, this is exactly what you'll see in part G, where they are reflecting again on the effectiveness and they're going into that analysis of those adaptations that they created for their 3 focus students and their learning needs. All right, as we scroll down, just a few more prompts, and that would wrap up step 3. A lot of times we see in step 3 reflect that candidates kind of lose steam or I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just assuming that they're losing steam because sometimes we'll see a shorter answer, not as much link back to clear evidence. So, kind of just like that 7th inning stretch. Let's, you can do this, candidates. Um, I know it's a lot for new teachers. So there is one rubric for step 3. There are, as we look at level 3, there are 4 prompts there where they're, again, clearly reflecting or analyzing, not summarizing, things like that. So again, going through this with your candidates is really important. Under the rubric, you'll notice, I didn't point this out before, but you'll notice in these guides, there's an asterisk or 2 or 3 or 4 where we're really calling out certain words and defining that. So that's also something to point out to candidates. All right. And finally, step 4, apply. Let's go back to the PowerPoint real quick. And I apologize, Xavier, you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you. And this is the final step, applying all that they've learned. They've planned it, they've taught it, they've reflected on it. Now what? Now you need to do something with that information. And how are you going to describe future steps for this content-specific instruction for the group and for your 3 focus students? So clearly just describing those future instructional steps. And for world language, those future instructional steps in the target language or in the target language with English as appropriate. What is going to advance their learning of both the content and the related ALD for single subject or for vocabulary for world language. And again, referencing appropriate evidence from steps 1, 2, and/or 3, looking back at planning, teaching, or they might be looking back at their reflection. All right, let's go back into the guide. There is some prompts I want to point out. So in step 4, this is a template or an upload. Again, this is candidate choice. They can use the Part H template narrative that we're providing, or they can turn on the camera and they can just communicate and authentically speak to the camera. Their recorded response can be up to 5 minutes and just talk about and explaining and answering these prompts. We really don't want candidates like staring at a script and reading from it. We, really hoping that candidates will just kind of talk to the screen and talk to us like we're just sitting there across from them and they're just answering those questions. And again, think of these prompts in the reflect and in the apply stage as things that you could incorporate into your fieldwork observation forms. Maybe it becomes part of, a reflection after you've done an observation or something like that, getting candidates really familiar with this process. So again, the step 4, the apply, based on what you learned, because I think they've learned a lot going through these steps already. Based on what you learned, do you need to reteach any part of this content-specific lesson for the group or for the 3 focus students? And of course, answers will be different for all 4 of those different groups. And then continue to use UDL to engage students in content learning. thinking about how will you continue additional higher order thinking and engage students to advance, um, again, their content specific learning, advance their content specific ALD or vocabulary, and then really continuing to leverage their assets. So I know that for some students, this feels duplicative. Like I've already talked about how I'm going to leverage their assets. Well, it's one thing to plan how you're going to leverage their assets, or you've gotten to know them and you've planned for it. It's another thing to teach, um, and building and leveraging those assets. It's another thing to reflect on it, and then it's a whole nother thing if you're going to apply it for future instructional steps. So that again, we know and we've heard from candidates like, why again is this duplicative? I'm just going to cut and paste what I put for student assets in step 3. I'm just going to put that in step 4. But that's really not thinking about the step that they're on, the step in the instructional cycle, and really thinking about, okay, now I've got to put that lens on that I'm going to adjust this for future instruction. Okay, and then either as one rubric, level 3, there are 3 constructs. You're all like familiar now with scoring. And again, we've highlighted some key words in level 3 so that they are applying what they've learned versus a level 2 and attempting, or maybe they wrote about the group, but they didn't write, or they left off a focus student or something like that. So again, little things like that would bring them down to a 2. So it's really good to understand those things, and then describing what they'll do for future steps, and then referring back to evidence. So as we keep going, keep scrolling down real quick, Xavier, and I'll keep showing you something else in the guide. This chapter, honestly, I think it should be bumped up to the very beginning. Submitting your evidence, because I think candidates really need to understand about preparing their evidence ahead of time. So these are things that you have now in the guide and the watermark draft that you can talk about as you scroll down. Submitting your evidence. Yeah, keep going right there. Like, for example, evidence cannot contain hyperlinks. We can't read them. We can't open them in the evaluation systems platform. So if they put in their commentary a link to UDL strategy 3 point blah, 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 we can't open it. So never hyperlinks, never links to websites or things like that. They need to actually incorporate that information into what they're writing. Again, a little highlight about English translation. Translations or transcriptions are not required for the following. So again, if bilingual candidates who are in a placement where a language other than English is exclusively used, they do not need to provide a translation or a transcription. As you scroll down, candidates who are using the World Language Assessment do not need to provide a translation or a transcription. So again, coming back to this is really important. So for all other candidates, any evidence in a language other than English must be accompanied by a translation. So again, pointing that out, that is all there and explained in the guide. As we go down to instructional submission specifications, this really talks about the font size, things like that, single spaced. Keep scrolling down. I think I've got a highlight on the next page that talks about the video evidence in part E, where they can submit 1, 2, or 3 videos. So this part's really important, and how to label it. And then you'll see there in the middle of the page, the supported file types. So is it an MPG? Is it a MP4? So these are all the acceptable file types. These are just kind of common questions we get a lot. And so I think, pointing these out to your candidates. So the candidates really get familiar with using the guide instead of just getting the templates first. So really, the sooner that they can register and get access to their own guide and their own templates is so important. Rather than sometimes we hear that they will get the templates provided by their program, but yet they never see the guide, or they might see it, just in passing, but they don't have their own copy to kind of mark up and really refer to. So getting them registered for the right assessment, because we do see a lot of times candidates will register for the wrong one. So getting them registered for the right one, cycle one, single subject, or cycle one, world language for version one. And then their registration is valid for 12 months. It's valid for 1 year. So if they're worried about, I don't want to register too soon because I'm not going to submit until December, that's okay. Getting them access and getting them the materials is really, really key. Okay, and then I think the next part of this assessment guide is just the glossary. And if you're not familiar with the glossary, it is a fantastic resource and it gives your candidates that common set of terms. We're all on the same page and understanding, what's an accommodation, what is academic language development, and things like that. So, okay, we can go back to the PowerPoint and I will pause for questions.
And I think we have a question
Okay.
about what can be for world language, what can be in the targeted language, and
Mhm.
what needs to be in English.
Oh, great question. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Maria. So, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Xavier, but I think what needs to be in English is the last two templates. Is that G and H? The reflection and the apply.
Apologize, I'd have to open up a couple
I know.
documents to verify, and I have all this on the screen,
I
unfortunately.
know.
But we can follow up with the response to that,
Yeah.
Maria.
That's a great question, Marie, but I believe it's those last two in step 3 and step 4 that are required to be in English. But everything else can be in the target language or in the target language with English as appropriate. I sound like a broken record.
All right, thank you. I
Um,
will look forward to that.
oh, yeah, of course, Maria.
If
I
you could
think I
just
can
drop
get
your
that.
email in the chat, I will follow up with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Xavier. Okay, any other questions? Thank you for hanging in there with me. There's a lot of good information. Um, in those guides and just hopefully this is a great way for you can utilize this with your candidates.
There was another question
Okay.
about the registration and about being September 23rd, and that is the kickoff for all version ones, correct?
That is correct. All version ones will go live on September 23rd and they cannot register until that date. They have to wait, and that is the go live date on the website, and that is the first date they could register and actually download their guide and templates. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Maria, for your email. And could you follow up with the single subject, I'm sorry, with the SL question, templates in English with all of us? Yeah, we can put that. In fact, while Marissa's doing her thing, I will look that up as well.
Julie, I
We'll
think this
be
is Annette.
sending out these videos, Amy K. Hi, Amy K. Yes, these will be put into PSD News, and we'll put a copy of this presentation in the Google folder at the end of this presentation, and then we have to send this over to IT, and they convert it over to a YouTube link. So we'll put it out in PSD News, as well as have evaluation systems send it out.
Julie, can I just ask really quickly? I think I'm sorry if I've asked this in another meeting, but are we going to be getting watermark drafts of the templates before, like, are we accessing the templates the same day as our students, or are there going to be watermark templates that possibly come out before then?
I don't think so. The only one that has come out so far, and it's in the Google folder, is the
Yeah,
Part B
that's
template,
right.
but all of the others are not ready yet. I think you will be getting them the same day your candidates get them, September 23rd. That's kind of why we were pointing out like how all the prompts are in the guide. So as a way to, um, you know, maybe create some temporary documents or something like that to support your candidates. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah. And then, so we can use draft guides with candidates. Yes. Oh, yes, 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 you can. We want you to. You can even use the highlighted guide like we've done here to go over and walk your candidates through if you want to give them that kind of, big 30,000-foot view of all 4 steps and walk them through it. That'd be great. You can share it with them. You can PDF and share it with them. Just really make it clear that this is not what they're going to submit, because these guides, while they are in watermark draft form, which means they're like 99% done, there still might be a comma or an and or something that gets changed. So really just make it clear that they're using a draft and that they have to use their own copies to submit so that they can register on the 23rd and do so. Yeah, great question.
There was another question about the submission dates, and I just wanted to make sure that it's clear for folks. The LPA, the MPA, Cycle 1, Cycle 2, all of those are CalTPA. So the submission dates that are listed on the website for CalTPA are inclusive of every version of CalTPA. So if you have a program where you have a multiple subjects program and a single subjects program, the submission dates for TPA are the same for whatever program pathway they are pursuing.
Mhm.
Then we have a question about folks. Is there there was a PSA about this, right? For the version 1 and version 7?
Yeah, so I think the question is, will it be obvious on the Pearson website how to submit version 7 if they have already done so and if they're eligible to register for another version 7? I haven't seen what it will look like on the evaluation systems website, but I hope that yes, it's clear. Make sure that candidates understand that version 7 is a 24-25 assessment, and they will only be allowed to register if they've already registered and submitted a previous version 7 assessment.
Julie, I'll hop in there quickly to address Marianne's or part of Marianne's question there. Yes, we are working to make sure all the language on the website makes it as clear as possible for candidates to know how to navigate to submit the version 1 versus a version 7. So we want to make sure that's clear for them and they don't have any hiccups with it.
That's right. And Stephanie, you said, what is the deadline for cycle 1 and cycle 2 submission? Are you talking about the previous version 7 or the version 1s? I wasn't sure.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about whatever will happen in this fall. I apologize for asking such a basic question.
No.
But
Yeah.
I am asking a very basic question. They can't officially register until September
Right.
23rd.
Right.
I want to know when.
When's
I
like
have,
the
I have single
first-
subject when
Mhm.
the first deadline is, and second, or do we not know that yet?
We do. We have that in an upcoming slide. We have the whole score reporting schedule for the whole year.
Thank you.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I do know we have it coming up in a slide.
Thank you. I apologize for maybe jumping the gun a little bit.
Oh gosh, no. Look, Xavier pulled it up. See, that's how good he is. So CalTPA assessment result dates. So as you will see on the right side, is if they submit their cycle by that date, then you look on the left for when they would get their scores. So since the assessment doesn't even open until September 23rd, then the first time that they could submit their cycle would be October 9th, would be the very first window for version 1. And looking to the left, they would get their scores on October 30th. Am I stating that correctly, Xavier?
That is correct.
All right. So the very first window for version 1 that they could possibly submit is October 9th, and they get their scores October 30th. And then it just, from there, it just rolls every, about every 30 days-ish.
And then all of the dates above will apply to the existing version 7. So I will just continue on that same cadence that we've been doing. So the candidates can just keep submitting as needed until the version 1s are officially released.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about version 1, or is this something that's about to come up?
Oh, this is version 1. What we just went through is the new version.
Excellent.
The one is the 25-26 changes that are reflected. Last year, the 24-25 guides that is version 7. And so that's where we kind of talk about version 7 as the old 24-25, version 1 being the 25-26, reflecting all of the changes that we kind of talked about for cycle 1 for single subject and world language. And then I see another question in the chat that got answered, but that is a valid question. So I want to repeat it so it's on the recording. But for version 7, for last year's version, are the passing scores the same as last year? For cycle 1, it was an 18, 21 for cycle 2. And so, yes, for version 7 for last year in the 24-25 school year, all of those passing standards, condition codes, all of that remains the same. Side conditions, no more than one score of a 1. For the new version, version 1, opening on September 23rd, we have a new passing standard just for this version. That is a minimum of 16 points to pass, and they can receive more than one score of a 1.
Excellent.
So, yes, so we're
Excellent.
straddling 2 different years, 2 different versions,
Understood.
2 different passing standards. Yes, I know. It gets so there is no, don't hold back your questions. We totally understand, but these are good questions, and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I will pass it over to my colleague Marissa to go over cycle 2.
All right, so cycle 2, and for those of you that are coordinators for multiple subject programs or education specialist programs, yes, cycle 1 refers to single subject and world language. MPA will be what we would do in education specialists and multiple subject in PK3. So we're talking about single subject, cycle 2, assessment driven instruction, and world language. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so I tried to break out what was in the single subject and world language. You'll notice that a lot of this is very much the same. But if you're like me and you're only here for world language, you're not going to even pay attention to one side of the screen. So candidates will continue using Common Core state standards. They will also use ELD standards. Now you notice that it's an academic language goal in cycle 1. The English language development standard has been moved to cycle 2. I recognize that it used to be optional in cycle 2 and required in cycle 1. We have flipped that to align with what we are doing in the LPA for the other subject matter areas, and we want to assess, folks once on something. If they can demonstrate it once, they've got it. So candidates will use recent available information. They will have a focus student in cycle 2. So before they didn't have that focus student, now they do. And a group of students is defined as 2 or more, and the candidate will plan a developmentally appropriate goal for their world language kiddos, and for single subject, they will plan goals because they will have the content specific goal that they are working on. If they're teaching single subject physical education, the physical education goal, and then they will have the English language development goal. Whereas in world language, it'll be the content that they're teaching. Just like in cycle 1, we want to leverage students' cultural and or linguistic assets and or interests in planning, seeing students as people that come with a whole lot of information and knowledge and skills and abilities, and using those to move them forward. And in cycle 2, the candidates are asked to do a learning segment template, which is 3 to 5 lessons. I always say 3 required, 5 doesn't get you extra credit, but they want to build a progression of learning, right, from start to finish. And the final lesson of the learning segment should include a summative assessment. Okay, we can probably head over to the guide and we can take a look at the single subject guide. Let's go ahead. Go ahead and scroll down. And again, we're in version 1. There were such significant changes to cycles 1 and 2 for single subject and world language that the the decision was made to reversion and start kind of fresh, and again with the new passing standard, and then doing a standard setting study in the spring. Some things that Julie pointed out, we were talking about assessments, formative and summative. The requirement of cycle 2 used to have that student self assessment. It is now an optional assessment that candidates do, or can utilize, but the cycle, the formative and summative assessment language was um, aligned to the language that is being put out through the California Department of Education, or the CDE. So that's the reason for the shift in that language. And so in step 1, they're using recent available information for the group of students. That can be any kind of assessment scores. It could be observations, conversations with a cooperating teacher. The goal is that they don't just say, okay, today is Tuesday, August 20, whatever it is. I don't even know what day it is today. But then this is the lesson that we're supposed to be on in this curriculum, and I'm just reading what's in blue because this is what we're doing. The candidate is supposed to know their students. They're supposed to use what they have and move them forward, not just teach something out of a box. And so that's why they're looking at that recent available information, and for the group of students and the focus students. And they are working to leverage their assets, interests, and use those to move them through their learning needs. And each lesson must include one content-specific learning goal, and that's where you stop, world language folks. Single subject folks continue on, and also to an ELD goal. So 2 goals for single subject, 2 best friends, they go everywhere together. Single subject folks, 2 goals. World language folks, content specific goal. Right. So in step 2, it's going to be 1 to 4 video clips. Again, the candidate can choose to make 1 long video clip, or can choose to break that out into any combination of 1, 2, 3, or 4 video clips. It's just 20 minutes of video, and the assessors will start with video clip 1, right? They'll start with video clip 1, and they will watch up to 20 minutes across videos. So if your candidate uploads 4 videos and they're 20 minutes each, they're only going to watch the first one for assessment of their for these rubrics where it's evidence. So just something important. The passing score for cycle 2 is 16, 14. They are both the same, cycle 1 and cycle 2, because they have the same number of rubrics. And does each of the 3 to 5 lessons have to have different content and ELD? It should be a progression. They're working on a standard, and it's a progression of lessons as they build on it. So it probably would be 1, maybe 2 standards at the most, and it would be a progression of learning from the start to the end with a summative assessment. Then the candidate would, in step 3, reflect. And again, this is challenging. Several people even put in the chat, it's a new skill. Some folks just buzz their way through their life and never think about things. But it's a challenge for new teachers, especially to look back on their practice. What did I do well? What do I need to adjust? And to truly look at what they did, who they are, and what instructional choices they made and the impact it had in the classroom. And sometimes the lesson plan just goes pooey, right? And not so great. But you know what? If I would have, I wanted to put the kids in groups of 4, and so I only provided this many materials. But you know what? If I would have put them in partners, I wouldn't have had 2 kids trying to like struggle to get materials and messing around. So next time I do this, that's what I'm going to do. Right? That's the learning that we want to do. And that's the learning that we want to encourage candidates to reflect. And when they reflect in this specific step, they're going to be reflecting on their focus student primarily, and then other students that fit into a similar profile. So they're going to reflect about what they discovered about the group and the focus student's progress towards the content specific. And again, that's where it ends, right, for world language. And then ELD goals is the in single subject. Then there's step 4, based on the analysis of all assessment results, they're going to plan either reteaching or an extension activity. This is specifically geared towards supporting that focus student. So they're going to teach and video record that activity. They may include students in the video in addition to the focus student who require similar support, or they can, I believe they can just have the focus student and do a one-on-one kind of lesson here. So let's go ahead and scroll down. Evidence table, we keep this right at the top. The biggest highlights that I put here were, some things that were different. This is single subject. They're selecting one focus student and one content specific learning goal and one ELD goal. And they're going to provide that commentary. Again, it's an opportunity for candidates to describe what they are doing and why. And again, it shouldn't just be a blow by blow. At this I did this, at this I did this, at this we can watch the video and know that. We need to know why. And when I would talk about this with candidates, when I was addressing them, I would tell them, that when you're watching a show like The Office and they do something and then they go to like these individual interviews and then the people talk, I was like, that's what the commentary is. It's an opportunity to describe what was going through your mind and why you made these decisions. So that's that piece, that commentary. And again, it's a Word document this time. The candidate will say at minute 1.20 of the second video or of the video, this is what I did and this is why. So instead of that little annotation tool where they had to drop down and select, they will be answering prompts, and they're all listed here in this guide. Then step 3, the biggest part is that summative assessment response and the scored performance criteria and specific actionable feedback. And getting into the commentary again, because there is another video in step 4, the candidate will provide commentary there. And Rick, I see your question about the profile of focus student. We're going to go ahead and get into that when we look at step 1. So let's go ahead and scroll down. Another change we did here was putting the essential questions up to the top, so that way they can help to be a focus for the candidates. Reading these questions, these essential questions to candidates, with candidates, having them point out how many things there are in each one of these is an excellent way to start. And I think there was a question in the chat if anybody had like a one pager to introduce candidates. If I was to say a one pager, I would say that the idea of the plan, teach and assess, reflect and apply, and then these essential questions can help to frame what we are looking for in the rubrics as assessors and what the candidate should be thinking about doing. Another thing that I used to do is talk to candidates about any place that they have to capture video. So this one was tough. That I had a candidate who did a really great plan and then taught their learning segment template and then said, you know what, I'm going to have more time during spring break to go through my reflect and apply step. So I'm going to put this away for 3 weeks and then come back to it and then come and recognize that there's a video that they have to do and apply. And by 3 or 4 weeks later, these kiddos have moved on. And so they had to, figure out how they were going to complete the performance assessment. And so recognizing that there's a pace to this and the candidate needs to, teach that lesson, get those summative responses, score them, provide that feedback, and do that follow-up lesson. It's not something you can do and then just put away for a month and then come back. The candidate needs to make that planning, and that's part of why that backwards mapping is going to be very important, but also recognizing the steps in the process where things have to happen, as Julie has said, at a perky pace. So they have to move through these things. So yeah, I like that perky pace. We can go ahead and scroll down. Thank you. Okay, so the plan, getting to know your students, reviewing that recent available information. I think we got that. Contextual information, a lot of it's the same from cycle 1. If they're in the same placement, they can reuse some of that information, but please don't just have them upload the cycle 1 materials here. They need to at least copy and paste the materials over so they're on the right template. We can go ahead and scroll down. Okay, so these are all the things to include. The cultural and or linguistic assets and our interests. Culture and language and our things about people that they bring with them. They are all assets. Now, I speak about myself. I live here in Merced County. I'm in a very rural space, and part of I just think about this one example. If people are not from Merced, the city of Merced, they'll often call our community college Merced Junior College. And it's not Merced Junior College. I can always tell when someone's not from Merced when they say, oh, Merced Junior College, because it's a community college or just Merced College. It was junior college like a really long time ago, but it has gone through a significant amount of name changing. And so, and a lot of the people that when I was working at the UC are often not from Merced. And so they would refer to these things. And that's part of the culture where I could very quickly pick up, you know, a UC kid is at Target because they have these like lanyards and the way that they look, you could tell they're not from the area. That's part of the culture. And so culture is more than just ethnicity. It's more than just race. And so to help candidates understand that is a very big task ahead of you, and one that I'm sure that you are working through with candidates on a regular basis. Because a lot of times when they see culture, they automatically just assume ethnicity or race, and that's not the only parts of culture that we're speaking of. Linguistic assets, a student who is English only and comes from a background where there's a lot of folks that are able to support their language, they might have some linguistic assets. So linguistic assets don't just mean another language that someone holds. So those are just things to think about. And then also in this world that we unfortunately are in right now, there are some candidates who don't necessarily want to out other students that may be looked upon by, I don't know, there's just a lot of fear in immigrant communities and such. And so if a candidate feels more comfortable to talk about the students' interests, they're more than welcome to. And especially like in early childhood, interests come across really well. And there's a lot of teachers that can leverage students' interests in sports or games or other aspects that they don't necessarily have to dive that deep into culture or language, and it's available to them. Okay, we can go ahead and keep scrolling. Let's see here. And so this is the first part of the focus student. So your focus student is one who meets one or more of the criteria. They're a district identified English learner. They are a district have a disability. They may benefit from more support making progress toward the content specific standard, or they have gaps in knowledge or misconceptions. Now, if Xavier, I'm sorry. I know that we do need to shift over folks pretty soon to present, but do you happen to have the world language guide? I would like to just, if we can look at that really quick, just to take a look at the focus student for world language. Cycle 2, yeah. And if we could just scroll down. Sorry, this is an important part, so.
Trying to download back and up here it goes.
Yeah.
All right, just let me know where you'd like to go to.
Sure, if we could go to that part in step 1 where we're talking about the focus student. I'm not sure if we can, if in these versions, I don't know if it's live. Okay, and keep scrolling. Okay, so the focus student has a language learning need, heritage language learner, bilingual, multilingual, has a district identified disability, may benefit from support with making progress toward meeting the content specific. And again, in this space, the content is the language specific standard or frameworks, or they have gaps in knowledge and are misconceptions related to that content and it's language specific pedagogy. So there's a question about using the same focus students from cycle 1 in cycle 2, as long as they meet, you know, that criteria that that are outlined here in the guide. So if your candidate wants to work with that kiddo in more than one space, they're more than welcome to. Okay, thank you. We can go back to the single subject guide. Okay, you can scroll down. And at what point is Ilse taking over for us, the wonderful and talented Ilse?
We'll check on that and then back channel and let you know.
Okay. All right. So in the learning segment template, this is the template that's available in part B. And this is the candidate will be summarizing their lessons. They'll explain how they fit in the larger scope and sequence. We can scroll down. And for each of the lessons, they need to include ELD standards, even if the group does not include an English learner. Okay? So in single subject, if they do not include an English learner, they still need to plan for an English learner. In world language, we're not planning for English language development. We're just planning for the content. The reason we're going through the single subject one, not world language, is because there's things that are in single subject that are not in world language, and so I just want to make sure to call those out as we go along. But again, the ELD standards are even if there is no English learner in the class. The candidate has a wonderful opportunity to plan. Okay, and let's go ahead and keep going down. In the final lesson of the learning segment, the candidate should plan to use a summative assessment that they are able to score. I had a candidate once that came to class with a bunch of post-it notes with one word written on them, and he was like sorting them out, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, this is my formal assessment for my my cycle 2." And I was like, "One word on a piece of paper? How are you going to score that on a rubric, man?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "That's more of a formative assessment that needs to be robust enough to be scored with a rubric and to provide rubric specific feedback." But it should be something that they are planning to do in one of the lessons, and something that they can provide specific actionable feedback to students based on that rubric or performance criteria. All right, and then there's some information about group work in there, but the formative assessment, again, the formative assessment is that working to shape a student. I often use, and sorry if you've heard these, the jokes don't get any better if you hang out with me any longer, but like clay, right? You form clay, you mold it, and until you bake it in that kiln, it's pliable and you can move it around. That's the formative assessment. That's where the candidate is, they're described one, right? And what they expect students to be able to know. And again, if you choose self-assessment, they don't have to do self-assessment. If you choose self-assessment, they would explain that. But that formative assessment, they're forming, they're moving things around, but that summative assessment is kind of that end game, like what do we know and how can I make some instructional decisions moving forward. So what content specific ELD and what content specific and ELD. They should be evaluated in that summative assessment for single subject, but the content specific for world language. Then the next parts are descriptions of some uploads and some descriptions of some summative assessments. And we could probably go ahead and scroll down and taking a look at these rubrics. The biggest difference you'll see when you look at world language where it says and ELD, it's not there in the world language, because again, they're not addressing that, just that content specific and in the target language or in the target language with English as a support. So we're looking at that content specific learning goals. We're looking at how they leverage students' assets and the formative and summative assessments in this rubric. And the fatal flaw, the level 1, the learning segment template contains inaccuracies. If the candidate does a whole lesson on 2 + 2 = something else, then that's going to be an inaccuracy, and it'll be a fatal flaw, a level 1 for their plan. We can scroll down. Okay, so the second rubric here, candidate uses assessments, instructional strategies, and learning activities in each lesson of the learning segment template that are clearly aligned with one another and support, right, that movement of those content specific and ELD. And the candidate's lessons align and create that progression of learning. So they're not 3 just random lessons that a candidate is doing. They are building on something. So just an example that I think about um, for literacy, maybe a candidate is writing an essay or something of that nature, and the lessons build on each other, and the summative assessment is the written material. Okay. All right, let's see here. I think we're on to step 2. We can head back to the PowerPoint. Let me see. Were there any questions in the chat, Julie, that we should elevate before we move on?
Nope, just a lot of about your jokes. Your jokes just get better. So no questions, just comments.
And then the comment about the ed sped materials, we're doing those this week too. So come back tomorrow. And again, the jokes don't get any better, but we will be working with MMSN, ESN tomorrow, and then the 3 ECSE, DHH, VI on Thursday.
Yep.
So, all right. So taking a look at step 2, helpful hints. Oh, and for those of you that are unable to attend, these all will be recorded. And so, Julie, are we sending out the links to the videos to folks who have registered, or are we sending them to all program coordinators?
The links, I'm sorry, the links, say that again.
The links of the recordings of these webinars, are we sending them
Oh.
out to everybody that's registered for that webinar? Or are we sending them out to faculty? How are we doing that? I just wanted.
Well, good question. I think everyone who registered will definitely get an email with the link, with the recorded link, but we'll also put them in PSD News. So if you subscribe and you get that every Friday, then if they're not there this Friday, they'll definitely be there by next Friday.
Okay, because I was just wondering if somebody should register, and then if they're unable to attend, they'll get a recording. But if it's
Yeah.
going to be PSD News, they're all good too.
That's good too, yeah.
Okay. So helpful hints and reminders, teach and assess. That's the bulk of this assessment, right? The video record 1 to 4 video clips up to 20 minutes. And the candidate is focusing on deep learning of the content, integrated ELD. Notice there's 4 things on the single subject side and 3 on the world language. Sorry, 3. But again, they're not focusing on that integrated ELD. Monitoring, adjusting instruction, and actionable feedback. And so on the other side, deep learning of the content, knowledge, skills, and abilities, monitoring and adjusting instruction, and actionable feedback. And for both single subject and world language, the commentary, right? That will be 1 to 4 video clips describing what is happening and the rationale for what they are doing. So, let's see here. So as far we'll James, I see your question, and we will definitely be discussing that as we get into the guide. So hold on to that one. And the PSD news, maybe we can drop a link to that in the chat, so that way folks can get signed up. And then we do at the end of this session have some listservs that we send out materials on. Okay, I think we're ready to head back to the guide. Single subject.
This out, and Elsie is going to take you to the guide and then take over from here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier.
Okay.
Can you see my screen? Is this where we're at?
Yes, we can. And if you could zoom in, that would be tremendous.
Oh, it's out.
Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Old eyes. It's also helpful for the video when it's a little bigger, but thank you. Okay, so this is, we're looking here at the teach and video record of the learning segment template of the learning segment. So the candidate is recording their lessons. And when I was working with candidates, I told them let the cameras roll. Sometimes they want to just record certain parts of things, and sometimes organic things happen that really do show off their ability, their strong ability to teach. So the candidate has the choice, again, a choice point of 1 to 4 video clips. And the total of 20 minutes. So like I said, it's not 4 video clips that are 20 minutes each. It's 20 minutes across all 4 video clips. We can go ahead and scroll down. About that permission to recording, do make sure that the candidate has permission to record in their district according to the rules. So let's go ahead and scroll down. Okay, so this is the 4 video clips that the candidate will be uploading to demonstrate their ability to teach. So deep learning of the content. This is a clip that shows the candidate actively engaging students in deep learning and to enhance their content-specific knowledge, skills, and abilities. Integrated ELD. This is where they show active engagement of the students, and you know that active engagement of the students is so important. Just a candidate talking, right? The whole video is just them. It's not really actively engaging students. So we're looking at how the candidate engages those students. Monitoring and adjusting instruction, you know, using those formative assessments, right? To ask questions, to check in with students, and to take a look and see where they may be able to help a kid understand something and adjust their instruction. And then that actionable feedback, right? We always walk around, great job, kid, high five, right? But we don't know what we did well. And so if we want candidates and our students to perform better, we need to tell them what they do well. And we need to give them some support with areas for growth. If you know, I want my son to make his bed every day, when he does it, I think, you know, I really like how you made this bed and you put your pillows up here really nice and fluffed everything. It looks really great. And so the next time he knows exactly what I'm looking for when I look for a nicely made bed. So he has that actionable feedback moving forward. All right, go ahead and continue on to the commentary. Like we said in cycle 1, it can be written, verbal, or ASL. I really like the verbal or ASL options are awesome. I need to take a drink water here. But truly, we don't want the candidate to just sit down, write all the answers out, and just read it, because that defeats the purpose of it being verbal. Something that we saw that was pretty cool, we saw like a program coordinator or someone just asked the question and then the candidate responded. So that's another way of someone being able to show what they know. They can respond up to 10 minutes and they should respond naturally, authentically. Some of you have candidates that can sell you sand in the Sahara Desert, right? And so that might be a way that they can show some strength.
Marissa, this is Julie. I don't know if you saw James's question or if you even answered it, I missed it, but it's got a good question. It's to elevate about video clips. Is there a certain percentage of time students must be seen in the clips or must be visible at all times?
So these are part of what we are doing in this version with minimizing and eliminating condition codes. Condition codes are now specifically for videos that don't play, templates that are blank, things of that nature. We're not counting heads, but we should have candidates and students in the videos as much as possible. We recognize that there are stationary cameras that are put in a corner and then a candidate walks around and might go in and out of the frame. There's not going to be a condition code for anything like that, right? And so the big thing is we want the candidate to be moving around and interacting with the students. We, like I said, there's no, you know, we're not going to say a 5-minute clip. It has to be at least this much time that you have to see people, because then that starts getting really nitpicky, right? What we really want to see is good practice. We want to see candidates engaging. We want to hear them. We want to see them. We want to hear and see the students and be able to see that they are actively engaged. Is that anything to add to that, Julie?
No, beautiful.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go ahead and Anna, there's a question about whether or not what templates. There will be separate templates for world language. Okay. So these are the commentary prompts. So again, you know, you'll look at the titles of the video clips and then what commentary prompts, because the commentary prompts have to be used across your videos. You don't have to answer them for every single component if it's not included in a video. Daniel.
Hi. So here I see in the third bullet point, leveraging students' culture and linguistic assets. And I know, Marissa, you mentioned earlier that, and I really liked that you did bring up that it's not just about race and ethnicity, and you had that really beautiful story about your own background. But I also hope that everyone here also understands how central race and ethnicity is to culture. In the preamble of the guidebook and throughout the CalTPA overview, the terms culturally responsive and culturally sustainable pedagogy are like listed throughout. And central to those theoretical frameworks are students' racial and ethnic identities and the candidate's ability to sort of think through those things, especially right now where historically marginalized groups that are racially marginalized are sort of being erased. So sort of thinking through how that can happen. I just hope that people don't forget that race and ethnicity are very important when you're when teaching your candidates how to talk about students' cultural background. And the same
No,
thing,
thank you.
sorry, the same thing goes for like linguistic assets too. Like I think that I was excited to see that candidates now have to think about students' linguistic assets because I had always seen it as English learners as seeing their other language as a deficit, like teachers historically see it as a deficit. And so by seeing them now as having assets, that is their first language, I think that that's super important for candidates to do. So just sort of making sure that, you know, we all remember that as well. That's all. Thank you.
No, absolutely, and thank you for that, Daniel. Because like I just personally, I'm Puerto Rican, and many people assume that living in the Central Valley that I'm Mexican, and so like there's different viewpoints of who people are, and people make assumptions. And the big thing, what I was trying to kind of get across is we want to make sure that candidates are going beyond the superficial. We don't think we're leveraging cultural aspects by having tortillas on Cinco de Mayo. Tortillas on Cinco de Mayo are delicious. I will never turn down a homemade tortilla. But it's not the culture that we're looking at here. We're looking at that deep level of culture, some of these other aspects. And then personally, I'm English only. I don't speak Spanish fluently well enough. I learned in high school and by working in communities where there are a lot of Spanish speaking students. And so I don't have another language, but because I have such deep understandings of English, it's a linguistic asset. So just thinking about, the kid I am, I'm not the child of hardworking immigrant parents. I'm fifth generation in California, and my parents lived through the 60s when there was a lot of discriminatory practices around people learning other languages. And so there are ideas and that people have just of one group, and that's why I like the TED Talk of the danger of a single story, because it does really help people and understand culture, language, and how every child that shows up, there are some things that they're going to have in common based on racial profiles, ethnicities, places they're from, but then they're going to be very different. And so I think the biggest thing here is just really knowing your students. Would you agree?
Yeah, totally. I think, yes, you want to get away from your students like stereotyping
Absolutely.
because they look a certain way, but actually getting to know the students and more importantly, their families and their communities and their cultural traditions, which are often tied to race and ethnicity. So yes, but absolutely right, Marissa. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Sorry, it's a passion of mine. The cultural linguistic assets and such. So that thing, and Daniel always has some wonderful things to say. I appreciate it. I very much so appreciate it. The question here is, what do candidates need to know to fully address cultural and linguistic funds of knowledge? the biggest thing I would say is the candidate needs to know their students. They need to know the context. They need to understand the groups of students, and every class, every context is going to be different, and recognize that you can't make generalizations about students until you really, you get to know them. And what paper says about them, what files say about them, isn't always, who they are. And, okay, let's see here. Let's go ahead and continue. I don't want to, we're running a little short on time, but okay, so that actionable feedback, again, this is that something a student can do to improve their learning and make progress towards their learning goal or goals, depending upon single subject. Remember, 2 goals, world language, 1 goal. Okay, let's go ahead, take a look at the rubrics. Okay, so deep learning of the content specific knowledge, of the content specific knowledge, skills, and abilities, right? This is what we're focusing on here. In world language, again, it's just the content specific. We can go ahead and scroll down. This rubric has to do with how the candidate intentionally provides appropriate integrated ELD, and how they explain why their instruction engages students and supports their progress. Okay, let's go ahead and keep going. 2.5, this is where the candidate is monitoring student progress and then using those results to adjust their instruction. So that's where this is being captured. We can go ahead and scroll down. And the last one here is they're using they're monitoring students, and then this is where they're providing that specific actionable feedback. So students are able to get clarity. All right. We can probably head back to the presentation, right?
Give me 1 second while I pull it up. Oh.
In Zoom, I miss having the little thumbs up button in the chat. I love I love what everyone's writing. You guys have been great. Thank you for all the interaction.
Okay, so reflect. Are we in, is this in cycle 1 or cycle 2?
That's
Just
cycle 1.
yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Let's scroll down. Almost there, like 3 more slides. Yeah. 1, 2, and 3. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So in single subject, the candidate and world language, they're going to score that summative assessment. World language is going to just have that content goal. Single subject is going to have the content specific and ELD goals. But the candidate is going to then provide the students with specific actionable feedback. Then they're going to submit the focus students summative assessment response. Before, they used to have to submit 3 samples, met, exceeded, and has not yet met. Now they're only submitting the 1. With that actionable feedback, they're going to reflect the analysis and reflection for the group and for the focus student. They really need to be accurate about identifying understandings, gaps in knowledge, and misconceptions relating to student learning. Then they need to really think about themselves. What were they effective? How were they not necessarily effective? And then think about changes they would make if they taught the lesson again. All right. Let's go ahead and go back to the guide. Okay. So this is where they're analyzing summative assessment results. They're looking to provide that specific actionable feedback on the content and ELD for single subject. We can go ahead and scroll down. They're going to submit that the summative assessment response from that focus student. It's going to be a PDF, video recording of process or performance. The video, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a video with picture. They could just record their speech, and that can be submitted as evidence. We can go ahead and scroll down. Group work is a tremendous resource for kiddos. They just have to make sure that they, in the summative assessment, that they are able to have individual student learning, so they can score individual students in this space. And again, the specific actionable feedback, it'll be a video recording of the candidate providing that feedback to a kiddo, or it could be a written summary of what it was. So we can scroll down. Okay, so this is where the candidate completes that template, reflect on their planning, teaching of the content-specific learning segment that supported the students, including the focus students, and reflect and cite evidence or refer to evidence from steps 1 and 2. So we can go ahead and scroll down. These are the prompts that the candidate will be answering for the group, and then again for the focus student. Let's go ahead and scroll down. And we can go ahead and go into the rubrics. Okay, so this is where the candidate is accurately identifying those understandings, gaps in knowledge, and misconceptions, providing that actionable specific feedback, and looking at their instruction. What was effective? What and what changes would they make if they taught it again? All right, and let's go ahead and go back to the slides. And I think you can just, I think you just click on the other tab, like you don't have to reshare, but it's okay. All right, so looking at slide 4, so this right here, looking ahead, the candidates, sometimes they feel pressured to move on with curriculum, but reteaching and extension is important and should be based off of data. For reteaching, they shouldn't just do another time around with one of the lessons from the learning segment template. They really need to come up with something different, new, that will help the kiddos, move forward. And then for extensions, just explain how the lesson deepens or advances the learning, not just the next step in the curriculum, not just the next page, right? Because that's not necessarily extending what they were doing with that step. Okay, we can head back to the guide. Okay, yeah, let's scroll down. So taking a look, what did the candidate learn related to the focus student and the group's progress? They plan a reteaching or extension activity that supports the focus student's content-specific development and English language development in cycle 2 for single subject, specifically content-specific for that focus student. Now, they can teach the follow-up activity with the focus student or with them and additional students who require similar support. So reteaching, again, if applicable, the focus student and additional students, same with the extension, and then the candidate will provide a brief follow-up activity they're planning to do, and then these are all bulleted here, so the follow-up activity must include English language development goals, even if the focus student or no other students are an English learner. So for your single subject candidates, they are always doing something for content, always doing for English language development. They should not leave that off. Okay, we can go ahead and scroll down. So they're going to video record that follow-up lesson and also provide commentary. If we scroll a little bit more down, they're going to select just one video clip. And these are the commentary prompts, and they can provide written, verbal, or ASL commentary. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Keep going to the rubric. All right, so again, they apply their assessment results, they choose reteach, they choose extend, and they also need to make sure to refer to evidence from any of the previous steps, 1, 2, or 3, that supports that instructional decision. Okay, we could go back to the PowerPoint. All right. So first question I just see, is there a document that summarizes the changes from version 7 to version 1? There will be. It's in production, and it'll be released along with a lot of the materials that are coming up in September. Were there any other questions that were in the chat, Julie, that we need to elevate?
I missed the one above it from Ruby. Just to clarify, the reteach can solely be with the focus student only. Just checking because this would not meet the 2-student minimum in the video.
Right, focus student or focus student with additional students that have a similar profile or need. Any other questions before we wrap up? And apologies for kind of moving through that at a too much of a perky pace, but didn't want to completely read it all to you.
I have something.
Sure.
That was outstanding. The whole thing was outstanding. I'm just confirming, you probably already said this, that we're gonna get emails with all the important links. Because,
Absolutely.
I need all this.
Well, just to confirm. So the Google folder link you have right now, that won't change. And so we will add a copy of this presentation, we'll PDF it and put it into that folder. And then in a few days, you'll get an email with a link to this recorded session, webinar.
And in the Google folder link, this also included both the PowerPoint and some of these documents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got all these watermark
Watermark document. I have one more question.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about my first session real quick. It'll be September 3rd. I'm going to get right into the CalTPA that day, although the other things we have to do too. Seems like there's a document that's about 14 pages long. It's not as long. I think that's where I start, and then build.
The program overview, maybe, is that the
I think
one?
so. I think so.
Yeah, we don't have it just yet. We've got so many new assessments coming out. So that one's not quite ready yet, but you could use the highlighted copy of the guide that we've gone over today to go over with your candidates. You could provide them with the watermark draft copy of the guide for them to start reviewing and thinking about, going over some of these core tenets as well.
I'm just taking some notes.
Yeah, but I love how you're jumping right into it. That's good.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie.
I think I saw a hand up. Did it go?
It was me, Julie.
Oh, hi.
I had a quick question about version 7 for we might have some alums, obviously, that might be finishing up version 7. Is there, I know someone asked about, a document that will talk about and summarize what the changes are for version 7. Is there an updated assessment guide that will?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did not make any changes to version 7.
Okay.
So exactly how it was last year is what you will see as candidates finish that version up. We did not.
Okay, so we can just continue to share that version 7 assessment guide then with candidates. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks.
And earlier, I think someone said, is there going to be a version 7 to version 1 side by side? Yes, we have a crosswalk coming out in October that showcases what version 7 looked like and the changes in version 1. So that will come out in October.
I have one other thing. It almost seems like this PowerPoint presentation is almost a starter because
Sure.
it's so succinct, it gets right into everything, and it's so practical. I'm almost thinking that that's my start.
Great. Yes, Marissa and I are, we were collaborating on this and trying to think of the best way to convey really detailed information to everyone in a way that is going to help you communicate to everyone in your, that's going through the
This
county.
is gonna be my part of my day one. You knocked it out of the park, Julie.
Oh, thank you. We did it. See, the jokes never go on. Thank you for that, Scott. Very kind.
Thank you.
Okay.
We can keep going. I think there's a couple more slides.
Oh yeah, we've got a little bit more. If I know it's 3:01, if you want to hang with us for 5 more minutes, but if you need to drop, we understand. We are going to record this, so let me just go ahead on the next slide. This just goes over the release dates, which we talked about earlier. Member Xavier pulled this up, so this is there for you as a reference. If we go to the next slide, we have our office hours, which resume after Labor Day. So we have for you program office hours, first and third Friday of each month. So for CalTPA, for PK3, MS, single subject world language, you can come from 9:30 to 10 and speak to Marissa and I. And then, of course, Ed Specialist will host after that from 10 to 10:30. We have candidate office hours starting after Labor Day weekly, every Wednesday from 4:15 to 5. So if your candidate has a question that they want to talk to us about, they can come to those. And then in October, we're going to start PLC, just that professional learning community where we gather and have some really rich discussions and really support each other. Kind of similar to what we were seeing in the chat today, because you can all be of support to one another. So I think that's great, and I will pass it to Marissa to close us out.
All right, so we have some upcoming Digging Deeper sessions. Our first one coming up is that using video commentary to reflect and improve practice. Our goal will be to have a commentary templates to be able to review at that session, and we're talking to some programs right now that do a really good job of supporting their candidates through that video reflection. And so we'll be having them come as guest speakers because, again, that was the purpose of that PLC, to bring you all together in a space that's more open forum where someone can say, hey, what do you have for this? And then it can be a conversation. We will be talking about program guide and candidate supports in October, then coaching and mentoring teachers and leaders. You'll sometimes see some of these leaders because there will be CalAPA folks in attendance at these as well. And then starting the year off right. We were also thinking about adding in another session, especially for the LPA, MPA side, where we're talking about candidates who are completing their cycles in a dual language setting. And so we're going to gather some more information and probably sneak it in somewhere here. So we'll be keeping you updated. And these dates and registration links are going to be in the PSD. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. We have some coordinator meetings coming up. The CalPA, it says PA because it's for TPA and APA. We're going to try something a little different this year with a half a day instead of a full day training session. It's geared towards new folks, but anyone is welcome to attend. Also, the winter coordinator meeting, barring any last year we unfortunately had to move it because of the fires in Southern California, but barring anything else, these are the dates that we have planned for the winter and summer coordinator meetings, so you can get them onto your calendar. We are breaking up the coordinator meetings this year. We're having the single subject world language, multiple subjects, PK3 on one day, and then the 5 education specialist areas on a different day, and then APA on a different day. And I recognize that some of you may wear 2 hats. And so hopefully you can come to each of these sessions with only 1 hat on, so you're able to focus on just that specific area. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. These are the performance assessment email listservs. These are listed from the CTC website. The CalAPA, for those of you who are working with administrators, CalTPA, literacy performance assessment email list. This one will most likely be going away probably in December, because now that the LPA is folded into the CalTPA, just whatever version the candidate is taking, that one might go away, but you're welcome to sign up for it if you're interested in getting information. CalTPA email list, and then the education specialist CalTPA email list. And again, this presentation will be put into the Google folder after the presentation, so you can click on these live links there. We can go to the next slide. Updating ADS. Okay, so if you're in the space where you're like, I'm not getting any of these emails and I'm just finding out stuff from my friend, please check in with your institution to make sure that your ADS is up to date. So that way we know who we are supposed to be contacting and emailing. These are some screenshots that were provided by the folks who organized the ADS. But I think we have the email address for emailing the ADS people directly. Julie, do you think you could drop that maybe in the chat for folks who might need that? And if you're watching this as a recording, you can always email the CalTPA email address to get the information for the ADS. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you for your attendance. That's that caltpa@ctc.ca.gov email address for any policy. That's a question about the exam, questions about rubrics, things of that nature. If there's a technical question that has to do with uploading things, that goes to the es.caltpa@pearson.com, or a lot of things are on the website. We hope that you are going through the website with candidates, showing them a lot of these resources, things that you can do, things that you can't do as a faculty member, and guiding them to that space, because a lot of the questions are answered there. Any other questions in the chat or anything else before we end today's webinar?
I'm not seeing much.
I know this
Thank
is
you.
surprising, but I have a question. We're all going to be best friends soon.
I thought we already were.
We are, and your jokes do get better, Marissa, every time. Because I'm supporting all of these groups, SPED and PK3. We have all of these programs at San Jose State. And so my head's just swimming a little bit because I teach all the support courses for every single iteration of the CalTPA, and I'm not going to say it again because I know you've heard it a bunch of times about just seeing the templates the same day as the students is just like, and trying to do the support courses. And I know it's not you, so I'm not going to say it again or give you a hard time because I know that people are vexed about it. But I'm going to use the assessment guides to do all of that. And that's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Toxic positivity. So I did want to ask really fast though, for those, we do have some grads, obviously, that are still working off of version 7. And I have some grads that are actually going to be doing the new LPA. So we have people kind of do all kinds of things. So the last date for them to submit version 7, is that going to be is that going to be August 28th, or is that going to be like they can submit it on an ongoing basis?
Until June or July
they can.
2026.
Oh, yeah.
June 30th, 2026.
Wow, that's really nice of you.
So they have this year to do, and again, if you have someone that completed single subject science and they did cycle 1 and they're like, you know what, I really like what version 1 of single subject science looks like, I want to switch, they're more than welcome to do that as well.
Yeah. And
Okay.
just so the recording's clear, the last date to submit a version 7 assessment is June 30th, 2026. After that, they'd have to switch to one of the new assessments at the time.
Right. And then that's really helpful. Thank you. And then obviously the people that are doing, obviously there's no new registration. So all those folks will have had to be registered and already working on it. So that's because that has sunset, right? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy.
If you do have a candidate that maybe submitted on the last cycle in July and just got their response and they didn't pass and they'll have a history, and they can re-register for version 7. But if they have not submitted it,
Yeah.
but or if they have an open registration, like
Yeah.
so okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Perfect. Because I do have some of those people that are still in the remediation process with version 7. So I have one person that was extremely panicking, and I was like, it's gonna be fine. You don't need to worry. You can, because one person was having a baby. She was like, I'm in labor right now, but I have to do. I was like, go have your baby, and we'll talk later.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Fine. Okay, thank
All
you.
right. I'll go ahead and stop the recording and thank everyone for being here. And we can stick around, answer a few
I have
questions.
one more thing. Remember Charlie